Okay, so those are examples of rational numbers. Every single one of these on there is considered a rational number. Okay, so the first concept that we're going to work with today is writing fractions as decimals. So this is the part of the book where I will say, okay, you can start to use your calculator for this concept. I know that yes, we can divide this all out longhand, but right now I'm not here to frustrate you. I do want you to understand the steps that you can use to transfer 1/6 into its decimal form. And most common made mistake is kids want to just take the numbers and put a decimal in front of them. And so some kids want to just write out 1/6 is 0.16, okay? Not saying that that's not the answer, but not always is that going to happen. In this case, it does. So when I look at this, I'm going to actually look at this for the operation that it is, and that is a division sign. So when I look at this, I'm going to take and do 1 divided by 6. Now, if I was going to do that longhand, it would look like this, okay? Which I'm not going to have you do that today. We're going to work with our calculators. So when I read this fraction right here, I need to remember that I need to read it just like I do in a book. Most common made mistake is kids go through and flip their numbers around. If I start reading in a book, I start at the top of the page and I work my way down. I am going to do that same concept with this fraction. So when I punch in on my calculator, I'm going to punch 1. This is the division sign, so my divided button, and then 6. Okay, so I'll pull this out. So I've got 1 divided by 6, and I get 0.1666666 and a bunch of sixes, and all of a sudden there's a 7 at the very end. Okay, so what I need you to realize, and I can't touch my calculator because it'll move, that this last 7 on the calculator is really just the calculator rounding up the last digit. It's not saying that all of a sudden it changes. It's saying I'm rounding up the last digit. Okay, so there would have been another 6. The 6 behind that last 6 actually rounded it up to a 7. So my final answer on this would be point, and yes, you can put your 0. If you leave it off, that's okay. 1, 6, and then the 6 is repeating. Okay, so we would only put the line over the 6. Okay, we're not going to put the 7 on there because really that's just my calculator rounding. And some of your calculators won't round, so you won't see that 7. But a lot of the scientific calculators round. Okay, so let's try another one. This time I'm going to give you a mixed number. And we're going to discuss out what you do when you have a mixed number and you're changing it. Okay, so here I have -2 and 1/4. So really the only step that I'm going to add to what I previously did is I'm going to take this and I'm going to write it in front of my decimal. So it's going to be a -2 and my decimal is going to sit here. Now I'm going to think of this as just a fraction of 1/4. Okay, so 1 divided by 4. Now some of you know that in your head, but if you didn't, okay, let's just go ahead and do 1 divided by 4 just to practice that calculator skill. I get 0.25. So I'm just going to write my 0.25 here. This is my final answer. Okay, so I don't have to change -2 and 1/4 to a mixed number, or sorry, to an improper fraction. I'm just going to carry this -2 down and then work with the fraction behind it and make sure I put my answer as behind the decimal. Okay, so I'm going to pull 2 out here and have you guys practice those. Okay, so you're going to do these next 2. And yes, you can use your calculator. Jot down your answers on your whiteboard or a sheet of paper, whatever you have with you. And then, so go ahead and pause your video, get your 2 answers and check back with me in just a minute, okay? So pause your video and do these 2. You should have gotten 0.45, both repeating, for 5/11ths. And for 1 and 5/27ths, you should have gotten 1.185 with all of these repeating. Okay, so our next step